time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and our What Happened episode with the Inquisitors. This is going to be an interesting one because the Inquisitors have been the minor villains of the story in multiple comic books, shows, various other means. We're going to run through exactly what the Inquisitorius is, summarizing the story of that branch of the Empire, the Jedi Hunters, if you will. And it gets us all prepared for Obi-Wan Kenobi right around the corner, which is going to feature a couple of them in that show as well. Blake is joining us on the show today to chat all about all this stuff, so let's get into it.
Another happy landing.
All right, Blake, welcome back to What Happens on Star Wars Escape Pod.
Oh man, and we're opening up with some funeral music.
This is the Inquisitor theme from Star Wars Rebels. Those of you who have seen Star Wars Rebels will recognize the theme that played every time the Grand Inquisitor showed up on screen, which we will soon again with Obi-Wan Kenobi later this month. How excited are you for that?
I'm very excited. I hope they stop pushing it back, the release date.
Yeah, I think it's committed. I think it's committed for the end of May. So one more thing to celebrate in the month of May, as we were talking about last week on our May the 4th special. The Star Wars calendar month of May, pretty crazy. All the anniversaries going on. This week is 20th anniversary for Attack of the Clones, so pretty nuts. And
I feel like over the next 10 years or so, I think every single day of the month of May is going to be some sort of Star Wars anniversary. Star Wars will claim the month of May.
Oh yeah, it'll be May Wars.
No.
Star Wars, the month
Star
of May.
May.
Star May.
May Wars. Yeah, there's got to be something.
It'll just graduate from Star Wars Day to Star Wars Month. That's what's gonna happen.
I think that'll be, and then eventually it'll. When you look at the calendar, it'll be, January, February, March, April, Star Wars, June.
Yeah.
Just be straight up replace it.
Then the general public will be celebrating Star Wars the way we do, just every day, surrounded by Star Wars stuff all the time.
I think the whole month becomes a stat holiday where you have to watch a Star Wars related show or film, some sort of content every day of the month.
Yeah. We had a good time last week with Phil and Reed talking on our Star Wars Day special. We had a good time.
Digging deep into Dash Rendar.
Yeah, digging deep into Dash Rendar, taking a look at the history of Star Wars Day, and we had that some exclusive news given to us by Orbit Key, and announced a bunch of deals going on, and we had a good laugh. We had a good laugh or two. George Lucas's son showing up as a guest at Celebration, all that stuff.
That's funny. Yeah,
the kid killed in front of Bail Organa.
So funny that he shows up there. I mean, honestly, even if he wasn't in the films, he just showed up as George Lucas's son. I feel like he would still get like a panel and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe just asking questions about his dad.
Yeah, exactly. So the Inquisitorius, I feel like the Inquisitors are very much this mysterious thing that a lot of people might know pieces and bits about. The general public might actually know them as just Jedi hunters that have shown up in the past. We've seen them through Star Wars Rebels. We've seen hints of that plot line, like seeds planted by Palpatine in the Clone Wars. We've seen them shown up in numerous amounts of Star Wars Darth Vader comic books. Anyone who played Jedi Fallen Order will know that they're out there running around hunting Jedi. Anyone who's seen the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailers. And am I leaving anything out? The Ahsoka novel. Yes, the Ahsoka novel.
That's right.
That's right.
What's funny is the Inquisitors now have been around for, man, what is it, like 5 years? Like, when did Rebels Season 1 come out?
Yeah, I think it was 2015, I want to say.
7 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And yet, to me, they still feel a little bit awkward in the canon.
Yeah, they still feel fresh. You know, it's almost like they were hot off the oven. You know, out of the oven at a Lucasfilm press.
Yeah, it also just feels like they were just something that they just kind of grasped for to fill this void.
Yeah.
They didn't, because honestly, what I think happened was the original EU canon was Darth Vader was the sole person who hunted down all the remaining Jedi, and that was his task, his original task by Emperor Palpatine, his first mission. And there's lots of books and the games and stuff that are based around that. That's kind of where I think Force Unleashed.
Yeah,
I think that's what that's kind of based in. And well, what happened was when they created Star Wars Rebels, they didn't. I think Dave Filoni even speaks to this. They didn't want to turn Darth Vader into the same problem that they had with General Grievous, where he became this monster of the week that got foiled constantly. Right, his plans are always undermined by this ragtag group or whatever, and they didn't want to do that with Vader because he's such an iconic character, and so they came up with the Inquisitors as like a lower tier to Darth Vader. So if they fail, it's not that big of a deal. They have basically a throwaway character that people won't get upset by, right?
Right. Exactly.
So to me, they've always felt like this Band-Aid fix, whereas I felt like Vader should have been the one who just did it all himself.
Yeah, and that would have drastically changed the plot line and the outcomes of a lot of the episodes in Star Wars Rebels, making a competent group of protagonists who always have to be the heroes of the day and win the fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Realistically,
but the whole point of Darth Vader doing that is whoever he's against doesn't win.
Exactly.
They lose constantly because it's Vader.
Exactly. It's funny how they worked that out in Rebels. Rebels was quite the challenge if you think about, that exact issue. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Like, there's nothing on the top of my head that I would know exactly what to do in that scenario. I think Jedi Hunters is probably a big crutch that a lot of us would have leaned on, because even the EU, like you said, like it did do that partially with Galen Merrick, and I feel like there were other forms of Jedi Hunters out there, but Vader was kind of the primary one with the story that he was the guy who did it.
Again, Palpatine didn't know about Galen Merrick. It was Vader's task to get rid of all the Jedi, the remaining Jedi, and he had a secret apprentice which he used to do that instead of doing it himself hands-on. But from the Emperor's perspective, as far as he knew, Vader was doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The Emperor didn't know about. That's why he was called the Secret Apprentice. Hunting down Vader's enemies for him, kind of thing. But it was a cool storyline. I feel like it stuck with a lot of people, and the idea of Jedi Hunters has just always been a thing. So in the canon, the Inquisitors have kind of been a dominant part of that story for 7 years now, ever since season 1 of Rebels came out. And as time has gone by, it's been more curious and curiouser as to... it's a bit weird because when Disney kind of took over, did this whole canon shift, a lot of the stories that we had in the EU between episode 3 and 4 were wiped clean, right? So there was all this time in between. And they started off doing Star Wars Rebels season 1 after the canceling the Clone Wars. And right out of the gate, we get the Grand Inquisitor as the primary villain of the story. And what
biggest
I always,
mistake.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to hit the spoiler button now because we're going into spoiler territory for the rest of the episode for all the things, all the pieces of content that I mentioned earlier. All right, so the Grand Inquisitor, they killed him off right away in season 1. At the very end of season 1, he's dead. And
So bizarre. It was so bizarre. I don't know why they did that. Like,
yeah,
it seems like it was just a massive misstep to just not start off with some random Inquisitor who then gets foiled, and then the Grand Inquisitor has to come in and figure out what happened.
right. So
Like, that's because you move up the ladder. The problem is,
yeah.
because as you're about to get to, they killed off the best Inquisitor, so then the rest of them are just scrubs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's always been confusing to me too, but, it is what it is. A lot of people might be wondering, what are the Inquisitors? So, the way that I would describe them, they're not Sith at all. They're at best dark Jedi who have been trained in the ways of the dark side to specialize in killing or apprehending Jedi. To then later turn to the dark side through methods of torture, but we haven't really seen that. We've mostly just seen Inquisitors as they are, used to be Jedi kind of thing. They already know the ways of the Force, but they weren't that great at being a Jedi, and then they were corrupted by Palpatine or something.
Were there any that weren't previously Jedi?
Not that I know of. Because the Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith comic book, which really kicks off the introduction to the Grand Inquisitor, as well as the other Inquisitors that start off in the program, takes place only weeks after Anakin becomes Darth Vader. So it's really like it sheds some light, I guess, shall we say, on Palpatine's preparation for this event, this turn of the Republic into the Empire. He was prepared not to just rely solely on Anakin and the clones to finish the job. He knew that he needed some backup. And this is the plan.
Galaxy's a big place.
Exactly. And this is the backup plan kind of thing. So that's what's called the Inquisitorius. And all the Inquisitors that we know of were nearly or previously Jedi. So let's run through the list of known Inquisitors, and then we'll kind of get into, I'll just summarize, again, major spoilers. We're just going to summarize the list, run through exactly how they died and everything, and then we'll kind of go through the summary of chronological events and do it that way, just so that, because there's a lot of confusing names and it can be hard to keep track. So that's what we're going to do, the express version, and then we'll kind of go into the details. So Darth Vader, he supervises the Inquisitors. He's kind of the head honcho behind the Emperor, of course, naturally being a Sith Lord.
Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah, and then he leads the Grand Inquisitor, which is the guy we were just talking about. He's the Grand Inquisitor, is the leader, and he killed himself out of fear of punishment from Darth Vader at the very end of Star Wars Rebels Season 1. So that was...
if I'm not mistaken, he was the leader of the Jedi Temple Guards.
Yes, yeah, he was once a Jedi Temple Guard. And the rumor is that he was at Ahsoka's trial. Or, sorry, Barris's trial. Barris / Ahsoka, yeah, where he heard Barris's claim as to why she bombed the temple. And the rumor is that he was one of the temple guards that was in there and heard her explanation for her act, and then fell into line with Palpatine and got corrupted. So that's the Grand Inquisitor. Then we start getting into the whole number system, and the number system is a little confusing because they're kind of nameless at that point. They ditch their name behind and really take on this identity of being what they are as an Inquisitor, as a Jedi hunter. So numbers 2 through 10. Number 1, I'm assuming, is just the Grand Inquisitor, the leader of the bunch. Number 2, number 2 through 10. The second sister, also named previously Trilla, killed by Vader after being bested in combat by Cal Kestis on Nur. Then we have the third sister. Her name is Reva, and she will be a new character to the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show. Then we have the fourth sister, also supposed to make an appearance in Obi-Wan Kenobi. She had a mystery death, and later on in the IDW comics, a rebel spy used her costume or her suit to infiltrate Vader's castle, claiming that she was the fourth sister before doing what she was there to do. The fifth brother, should also show up in Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was also in Star Wars Rebels and various other things. He was killed by Maul on Malachor in Season 2, the finale of Star Wars Rebels. The sixth brother was killed by Ahsoka on Rayada or Rada in the Ahsoka novel. The seventh sister killed by Maul again on Malachor. The eighth brother killed by Kanan indirectly after he sliced the eighth brother's lightsaber, and he tries to helicopter saber away, and then it blows up in his hand, and he falls and plummets to his death. Chronologically, yeah, well, it's such a simpleton way to die, and chronologically, he's actually the last one to go.
That reminds me, it's almost like Boba Fett being the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, and then he dies by his jetpack malfunction.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Then we have the ninth sister, who is killed by Cal Kestis. I believe that was on Kashyyyk, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yep. On top of the life tree, the world tree.
Yes, thank you. Okay, yeah, cool. The 10th brother, which is the last in the named ones, killed by an Order 66 activation. This is very early on in the events of the Inquisitorius becoming a thing. They go to hunt down a Jedi who's not necessarily gone evil, but he's kind of gone dark. And he actually knows about the Order 66 principle programmed into the clones. And at that time, the stormtroopers are also still clones. And so are some of the purge troopers and such that help the Inquisitors hunt down Jedi. He actually knows about this Order 66, and he is the second person to use it. And he uses it. He says, execute Order 66 in the room with the Inquisitors there, who have him cornered against a wall. And the troopers behind them or whatever actually activate and start shooting at all of them, including the Jedi and the Inquisitors, which is a pretty crazy moment. And the 10th brother gets killed in that process. Numbers 11 through 13, there's a few more Inquisitors which are worth mentioning, 3 more in fact. There's 2 that show up in the Darth Vader comics, which are swiftly killed off by Vader himself for their betrayal, which is an unidentified Twi'lek and a red-skinned woman. The final Inquisitor is technically not canon because she was written for the expansion for Forces and Destiny, the RPG book by Fantasy Flight Games. And those are, the stories in those games are not really canon, but they're kind of designed around the canon. The expansion is called Ghost of Dathomir. She never had a name, but she was an Inquisitor that was murdered by an apprentice that she took on, Dathomir, who was in fact a Night Sister witch. And she decided, I guess, to kill the Inquisitor that decided that she was going to be her master. So, yeah, probably not worth a huge mention other than that, but because she's an Inquisitor and because it was designed around the canon, I figured might as well throw it out there. And that's theoretically numbers 11 through 13, but again, not super important because we don't see them more than those mentions. So there's a little quote here I thought was pretty cool. In the Darth Vader comic, Darth Sidious says to Vader, the Inquisitorius, a project of mine, long planned, slaves to the light side once, now awake, hunters, one and all. And then Vader asks, what do they hunt? And Sidious says, why, Jedi, of course. So that's a little outtake from the Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith comic books, which is highly recommended. It's a great one to read, especially going into Kenobi. So Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Let's kick things off with the details here. Start from the beginning chronologically. What do you remember about the Children of the Force arc? Cad Bane stealing the Kyber crystal, the holocron, the kids. Do you remember much about that?
I do. I believe this was the introduction of Cad Bane, was it not?
Yes, I believe it was, yeah. So Cad Bane was tasked by Sidious to
Infiltrate the
steal...
temple.
Yeah, to steal a Jedi holocron. And then he was later tasked to steal a Kyber crystal, which had the names of Force-sensitive children around the galaxy inscribed on the crystal.
Let me ask you this. is this holocron the same or somehow related to the exact same holocron that we find in Jedi Fallen Order?
You know what? I don't think it's the same one, but I know that ran through my head as well, and I kind of self-determined that it wasn't. But
So maybe the Jedi found a holocron by the same creators that we meet in that game.
there's a possibility it could be the same one, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like that holocron might. I'm gonna have to take another look at when those events take place, but.
I feel like this breaks the canon of the game now I think about it, because the game story. Sorry, this is such a tangent. I'm actually curious about this.
Yeah.
In the game story, there's the Jedi archaeologist, and he's trying to break into the tomb, which then finds this holocron. And if they're doing that, then obviously they didn't have that holocron. But that holocron does the exact same thing as the holocron that Cad Bane is trying to steal.
Yeah. So eventually the holocron itself is recovered, I believe, in the Clone Wars arc. But so I don't know. Maybe it's the same one.
I don't think it could be, because then why would they be trying to break into the vault which contains it?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And you have to use all this ancient history to get there, including going to Dathomir. So that doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. It could in fact be the same one. Yeah. At some point in the arc, Cad Bane takes Ahsoka hostage and forces Anakin to insert the Kyber crystal into the holocron to be able to read the data. So he gets away, of course. Ahsoka's fine. Gives the list to Palpatine, and then Palpatine gives him names of children around the galaxy to then kidnap and take to a laboratory that he has on Mustafar, which is later then thwarted. The plan is thwarted by Anakin and Ahsoka, of course, and the whole laboratory gets sinking into lava, and the kids are fine, and everyone's returned back to their families and all that stuff. But it's really just a tribute to the plot that Palpatine had this vision of, I want Force users working under my control. And the idea with the kids was that they were going to do some sort of surgical thing to probably something similar to the clones, actually, and insert some sort of command chip in their brain to, and I know the droid doctors once said to him that they might not survive the process. And then Palpatine has a very insidious thing that he, retorts and like, oh, well, they're just Jedi children, If I can't have my way with them, then they're better off dead, kind of thing, right? So,
right,
yeah. So that was kind of the first whisper of doing
that's pretty
program.
neat, because this episode was years and years before the Inquisitors were invented. So it's neat how they took a snippet like this and then wove that into something.
Exactly. The Sith have always been somewhat lenient on having people work for them as assassins or acolytes, right?
Asajj Ventress, for example.
Yes, yeah. Asajj Ventress. Sidious used her as a means to an end, and was, basically confronted Dooku about letting her get too powerful before they decide to cap her off, kind of thing. And that's where her story begins. But she's a great example of not technically an Inquisitor, but kind of the same idea, like used by the Sith Lords to get their way. She's very talented and skilled with the lightsaber and with the Force, and was previously a Jedi. So that she's a great example of basically what an Inquisitor is, and not a Sith Lord at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's funny. I almost feel like Darth Maul is more of a Sith assassin than he is a Sith Lord, even though he has the title Darth.
Yeah, he's had a very interesting storyline because of the fact that he was used in that way, right? And I mean, Sith apprentices, in a sense, if they don't succeed in killing the master and take over, are just kind of, they're all expendable to the master who had plans, right? Dooku is the same way, and it's true. I mean, even Vader is a tool to get what Sidious wants, and he wants to replace Vader with Luke eventually. So, yeah, the Inquisitors, even though they don't have the status of Sith Lord, they're still a means to an end, like anything else to the Sith Lords. Yeah. What do you remember about season before, I think it was the Clone Wars, with the General Pong Krell, the Umbara arc.
I think I remember that arc better than most because it's probably my favorite arc in the whole series. Yeah, where you over the arc, spoilers, you find out Pong Krell has figured out that there's a Sith Lord controlling both sides of the war, and so he turns on the Clone Wars. And basically, he becomes a Dark Jedi himself and betrays the Order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he pits the clones against each other. They start, he basically tries to sabotage the Republic's efforts on Umbara. And a couple of clones end up basically
I think
pulling a mutiny act against him because they clue into what's going on, and it was a really, really cool early kind of Order 66 style moment, but in reverse because Pong Krell was actually the villain.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
But Pong Krell reveals that he knows that the whole war is a sham, and he essentially did it to impress Sidious, even though he doesn't know who Sidious is yet. And he's hoping to, I guess, become apprenticed.
Yeah. It's it was so cool hearing his little monologue actually before he dies. And if it's all right, maybe I'll just play the little clip here. We can take a listen as to what he says. So this is after the clones manage to capture Pong Krell and they keep him imprisoned, and they go to basically execute him in his cell.
Why, General? Why kill your own men?
Because I can. Because you fell for it. Because you're inferior.
But you're a Jedi. How could you?
A Jedi? I am no longer naive enough to be a Jedi. A new power is rising. I've foreseen it. The Jedi are going to lose this war, and the Republic will be ripped apart from the inside. In its place is going to rise a new order, and I will rule as part of it.
You're a separatist.
I serve no one side, only my own. And soon, my new master.
You're an agent of Dooku.
Not yet, but when I get out of here, I will be. After I've succeeded in driving the Republic from Umbara, the Count will reward my actions and make me his new apprentice.
How could you do this? You had my trust, my loyalty. I followed all of your orders, and you made me kill my brothers!
That's because you were the biggest fool of them all, Dogma. I counted on blind loyalty like yours to make my plan succeed.
That will never happen. You're a traitor, General, and you will be dealt with as one.
You never learn, Captain. The Umbarans are going to retake this space, and when they do, I will be free.
Okay, yeah, so that's part of his little monologue there. They later come back and execute him and stuff, which is pretty sweet. But it's so interesting.
I was slightly mistaken. So I thought he figured out Palpatine, but he actually thinks that Sidious is the current Sith Lord, Sith Master.
Yeah, so he doesn't really name drop anyone, I guess. He just kind of
except Dooku.
Yeah, he name drops Dooku when Rex asks like, "You're an agent of Dooku," and I think what he knows that Dooku's a Sith Lord, so he says like not yet or whatever he says there. But
yeah, and he says he wants to become his new apprentice.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So he's on the right mental track to. I feel like if the plan is in place with Palpatine to have this Inquisitorius, this group of Jedi hunters, I feel like Pong Krell through the Force knows what's about to happen but doesn't have the details. But he knows that he's on the wrong side of the war for survival, right? So what he does is he turns against the Republic to be what he thinks he needs to be for the events that are to come. And it basically screws him over and he ends up dying anyways. But what was
he got too arrogant.
Yeah, what was so interesting though is that he saw that moment coming and knew that there would be a group of people that would have to help the Sith to do what they got to do, right? And he foresaw his placement as an Inquisitor. So it's worth talking about Pong Krell because if things went his way, he could have in fact been an Inquisitor if things went the way he expected. So very also a very like early sign of the war ending soon, and him kind of picking up on things telepathically. So really neat. Also another seed for the Inquisitorius.
I wonder if he was maybe one of the basis for the Inquisitors, because they all ended up using a similar lightsaber to him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So all the Inquisitors tend to use the double-bladed lightsaber with the mechanical circular joint wheel, which spins it around really, really fast. They all have the same one.
General Grievous style.
General Grievous style, yeah, that's right. I don't know why they think it's effective, but it does allow them to, in fact, fly. If they hold it above their head, they can helicopter around all over the place, and it's the stupidest thing I think we've ever seen from
agreed.
a Dave
But for the
Filoni Star Wars
record,
story.
Well, I think it was explained that they needed an excuse to why they could get across the map in a story fast enough. So that's what they did.
Yeah.
But Pablo was asked about this, how it functions. And so it's not actually the blade that gives them lift. Apparently, there is... What's the name of those things I use in Star Wars?
Like a propulsion...
Yeah, like on that exact name, but there's like anti-grav technology built into the saber, essentially. It's the same thing.
Right. That might be why it's also a circle, I guess.
Could be. But that's why it'd be the same tech that keeps like speeders floating, for example.
I mean, I can kind of see that. I mean, I know we've seen like little tiny probe droids and stuff that float around and we don't really question it.
Yeah,
but
even very small ones.
Very
like
small
palm
ones.
size.
Yeah, I know there's those little ones that float around in the Senate chamber, like the floating cameras and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the tech does get quite small, but it's just, I think what's awkward when we look at it is, can something that small really levitate with a human being hanging off of it? Like, I don't know. I feel like
the droid that Obi-Wan grabbed onto in Attack of the Clones.
It was quite heavy. It was like, it was bigger than a football. It was.
That's true.
It was like the size of a little carry-on suitcase or something.
It was 10 years later. Microchips, the processors, they quadrupled in power.
I guess so. I mean, it still looks awkward, and I'm still not the biggest fan of it. But some people might like the idea of a helicopter lightsaber. I don't know. The thing is like if they do have the technology in the hilt, why do they have to spin? Because if it's true that the thing can just for style, yeah. It's like Buzz Lightyear. We're falling with style.
With style, that's right.
So many Inquisitors who joined initially once the turn of the Empire/Republic came, Order 66 happened. Initially were either corrupted by evil or tortured into joining. Most joining due to the corruption and Palpatine's lies, deception, convincing the galaxy that the Jedi were in fact villains of the war, and misleading everyone, including the senators and the Republic, all that stuff. Basically, pinning the blame on the Jedi, and much like he did with Anakin, he kind of groomed all these people to the followers, the Inquisitors, especially the Grand Inquisitor, who was denied access to the Jedi archives by the librarian. And that was one of the hooks, I guess, that Palpatine kind of got in his meat was, I can give you access to this stuff, and this is what's going to happen. So, that plus possibly hearing what Barris had to say probably pushed him over the edge. So he was a Payan. What's the species name? A Payan. It's the same species that we see on Utapau that Obi-Wan talks to, right? That's the Grand Inquisitor.
Pawan, probably.
Pawan, yes, thank you. Was once a Jedi Temple Guard. He became the Grand Inquisitor.
They're also known as the corduroy-faced aliens.
Yes. He joined Sidious when the Sith Lord promised him access to the Jedi archives. The ninth sister was a former Jedi, her name was Masana Tide. And the 10th brother was also a former Jedi Master named Proset Dibbs, who joined Sidious at the end of the Clone Wars. The second sister was a former Jedi Padawan Trilla Siduri, who was captured shortly after Order 66 and tortured into joining the dark side. And those are the kind of finer name details that we know on those guys. Following the formation of the Empire, the Grand Inquisitor worked with Darth Vader on locating the Jedi Order's chief librarian, Jocasta Nu. During his research in the archives, the Grand Inquisitor, who held a personal dislike of Nu, because she had one day denied him the chance to learn from the archive secrets and all that stuff, he confronted Nu after he openly insulted. He confronted Nu after he openly insulted the knowledge that he was reading. And at first, the Grand Inquisitor planned to kill Nu, but when he defeated her in combat, he was prevented from killing her by Lord Vader. As Vader and the Grand Inquisitor argued, Nu was able to make her escape. However, Vader was able to pursue Nu and killed her himself without the Grand Inquisitor's help. That was the initial introduction between Vader and the Inquisitor, and Sidious at the time hadn't even told him that the Inquisitorius was a thing. And that's kind of their first initial introduction. And then Vader was kind of let in on the plan for this Inquisitorius program and gets introduced to a bunch of the other guys. Sometime later, the ninth sister accompanied Vader to investigate reports of a possible Jedi in a cantina on Cabaria. And about 1 year after the rise of the Empire, Palpatine suspected a Jedi of influence, influencing the deteriorating negotiations on Mon Cala. There was some business going on Mon Cala, and King Lee Char, who was at the time in the Clone Wars when we last saw him, was a prince. He sent Vader and 3 Inquisitors to investigate this ordeal, and accompanied by an elite squad of clone purge troopers, and they had a whole mission there that took place. The 6th brother discovered an experienced Force user was hiding out on Habeska and the agricultural moon of Rada ever since Order 66. This Jedi turned out to be, in fact, Ahsoka Tano. And the events of this event, I believe, was 2-ish years and a bit, maybe, after Order 66 happens. So he hunts her down and confronts her. They have a fight, and she's able to identify his offensive fighting style, takes advantage of it, and she reaches out to his lightsaber in the Force and is able to detonate it using the kyber crystals inside, which effectively kills the 6th brother. Ahsoka takes his lightsaber crystals and floods the system with the rest of the citizens on Rada. And shortly afterwards, the Grand Inquisitor arrived, unaware of Tano's identity, decided to hunt her down himself, but not before informing Vader about it. The lightsaber crystals that she stole from the Inquisitor's lightsaber that she killed with effectively are the same ones that she purified in the Force and uses them to make her white lightsaber blades that we see through Star Wars Rebels and The Mandalorian.
Yep. That's right. I remember that storyline. That's pretty neat. So she was originally fighting, she didn't have lightsabers at all then, because she left them at the Jedi Temple.
That actually, sort of. So if you remember the finale of the Clone Wars, we're talking about like the new Disney resurrected finale of season 7. She buries her lightsabers with all of the clone helmets that she sets out on pikes in front of the crashed Star Defender or Star Destroyer in that snow planet. And
that's right.
Rex was
Vader
there.
finds them there.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, at the beginning of that arc, she's given her lightsabers back after leaving the Order.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So she didn't have them for a while in the Clone Wars when she left the Order, and then Anakin gives them back to her with new blue crystals in them. And then at the very end of the series, she buries those lightsabers in the dirt, along with all the clones' helmets. It was a very sad, emotional moment, but that was her basically saying goodbye to that phase of her life. And when the Inquisitor comes after her these years later, it kind of sparks her into this. She has such an interesting story. We're gonna have to do a what happened on her as well, but the fact that she takes the Inquisitor's red, corrupted, bleeding lightsaber crystals and purifies them in the Force and makes them white and whole again was quite a powerful moment in the book. And so far, I think she's the only one to have done it. I know there's a character in the High Republic that also has white lightsabers, but she's the only one that we've seen on screen with that as an identity piece, for her
Yeah.
new position, in life.
Yeah.
Not
and
really.
Part of that, I think, was to show that she's no longer part of the Jedi Order. But
Yeah.
she's still on the light side of the Force.
Exactly. Yeah, she's kind of elevated herself above the Jedi religion, but she's kind of become something more, kind of like something that Qui-Gon was elevating to as well. He was going beyond what the Jedi had going beyond the dogma, and kind of really just following the way of the Force instead, right? And that's kind of what Ahsoka's doing when she becomes who she is, that we see her in Rebels, because she becomes this Gandalf character, right? And that's effectively what Dave wanted for her character. She goes through this this post-Jedi journey, shall we say, like kind of like a post-Balrog journey for Gandalf, and comes back and is technically more or less a Gandalf the White sort of character, where she's renewed and kind of wholesome in a different way, and the lightsabers reflect that identity.
What's funny is she actually does that as well after her duel with Darth Vader.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the journey. Yeah. So the white lightsabers kind of kick her off on that route, and then the duel with Vader later really kind of.
Vader's the Balrog.
yeah. That's kind of the whole turning point for her, for sure. Jedi Master Eth Koth. We've known him ever since Attack of the Clones. I forget if he was in the Phantom Menace or not, but he was, I believe, in the Clone Wars, in here and there. I think he was featured in at least one story arc where he had to be rescued. But
pretty sure you kill him in Force Unleashed.
Eth Koth?
I recognize the name Koth.
I think he was in a story arc with he was in the story arc with Grievous in the Clone Wars, and I believe he there was like a whole section where he was kept captured, and he gave a message using his hands as to where Grievous was. I think it was in season 1 or 2 of the Clone Wars. It was a neat little kind of episode to see him, because he didn't really get much screen time at all in the films. So Jedi Master Eth Koth was hunted down by the Inquisitors and Vader, and this is probably around the same time as the Ahsoka book takes place. He at this time now has a young child and a wife, and against Vader's wishes, one of the Inquisitors pursues the wife, who runs away with the child. And this particular Inquisitor, which is one of the 2 unnamed ones, kills the wife and takes the child to Vader after Vader kills Eth Koth, who bests him in battle. And the young child is given to some nurse droids on Coruscant to be dealt with. But this is a kind of a sensitive moment for Vader, because he definitely he gave a command, and the Inquisitor, who's supposed to be loyal, did not follow that command. So he keeps that in mind. And then that same Inquisitor kind of falls in love / has this relationship going on with the other Inquisitor that doesn't have a name, which is the Twi'lek one. And an incident occurs on Coruscant, which saw Vader pursue them and eventually eliminate both of them on the planet. But the whole pursuit had actually attracted a lot of attention, and in the process, a senator was killed, I believe, in the incident. And Palpatine was quite angry about this whole ordeal that happened on Imperial grounds, being kind of like the Holy Land now. This is Palpatine's place of that's his city, that's like where he's got the most leverage, most power in the galaxy, that he made the Inquisitors relocate off planet, and they started to build the fortress that we then see in Jedi Fallen Order, which is on the planet Nur, in the same system as Mustafar, just across. You can actually see Mustafar in the sky on Nur, and it's the water world across from Mustafar. Really cool. Having a water world like adjacent to a lava planet, so sick. having Fortress Vader on the lava planet and then the Inquisitorius on planet Nur, like across the way. I just thought it was one of the coolest things ever.
It's a pretty neat combo. I know I really enjoyed exploring the underwater planet in Jedi Fallen Order. It was a lot of fun.
That was really cool. Yeah. So the second sister and the ninth sister are sent to hunt down a Jedi on Braca. This Jedi is known to us and once to the Republic and the Jedi Order as Cal Kestis. The events of Jedi Fallen Order take place, and both Inquisitors meet a fateful end. As we know, he kills the ninth sister, and second sister later is killed by Vader when she actually is bested in battle by Cal Kestis and is killed for her failure, I guess. At the very end there, she also kind of has a bit of a turning moment, and you think that she might turn to the light side again, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because when you duel her, you're with her old master.
Right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, great game, by the way. And now that you finished playing it, how do you like it?
I liked it quite a bit. I'd say, because I always like story-based games, especially RPGs. So of the new games that have come out, it's hands down my favorite.
Nice. Yeah, I know you really appreciate the solo single-player story games. So, a lot of people who haven't played the game, you should go and pick it up. I know it was on sale on May the 4th. I don't know if it's still on sale, but it was down to like $12 or $20 or something. It was pretty crazy.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Well, if you... This is me doing some sales pitch, I guess. if you don't want to even pay for that and you're pretty quick at the game, you could always just buy the Xbox Game Pass for $1.
You know what's coming to mind right now?
What's that?
Merchandising.
Yeah, exactly. This deal's getting worse all the time.
Oh man. Yeah, so Fallen Order takes place. We see two Inquisitors in that. Both of them die. Fifth brother and the third sister, Reva. Now, as we know her, we know that they actually first introduced her as Reva, and now we know that she's actually the third sister. So both the third sister and the fifth brother, who is a constant character in Season 2 of Star Wars Rebels, will be showing up in Obi-Wan Kenobi 10 years after the creation of the Inquisitorius and the Jedi Purge. We know that Obi-Wan Kenobi takes place right smack dab in the middle of Episode 3 and 4. So we're going to see appearances from the new third sister, which we've never heard of or seen of before until now. We know the fifth brother is going to be in there. He's being played by Sun Heng. He plays Han in Fast and Furious. And we also know that there was one other I mentioned. I think it was the fourth sister, the one that has that mystery death, and the one that the rebel spy later used her costume to infiltrate Vader's castle. She's supposed to also make an appearance in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I would not be surprised if they threw in maybe one of the other ones, just maybe hasn't shown up in the trailer yet. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if we saw a lot more of them. We also know the Grand Inquisitor will also be prominently featured in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So it's worth mentioning that the events of that show take place in our chronological time here. We don't know the details of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but the show premieres May 27th, is it?
I don't even know anymore.
Man, I feel like we should be counting down the days or something like that. I feel like I should know this off by heart, but the thing that confused me is it was on one day and then it got moved. But
exactly.
Yeah. So now I've kind of lost track. 27th, yes, Friday 27th. Yeah. So we all know that all the hardcores out there are going to be sitting at Disney Plus Thursday night. 11:59 p.m.
That's right. Just refreshing the page. Wait for that play button.
Refresh. Come
on!
It's like trying to buy Comic-Con tickets, like just mashing that refresh button. Yeah.
Get a VPN so you can change your time zone. Get it a couple hours early.
That's the spirit. So later on, after the events of Obi-Wan Kenobi, we flash forward probably about 4 or 5 years. And rumors have emerged of a Jedi leading a rebel cell on the planet Lothal. This has reached the ears of the Empire, and Vader sends the Grand Inquisitor to take care of the problem. After several encounters, the Grand Inquisitor succeeds in capturing Kanan Jarrus, but was defeated by Kanan in a lightsaber duel during the rescue staged by the rebels and Kanan Jarrus' Padawan Ezra Bridger. Rather than face his master's punishment for his failure, the Grand Inquisitor kills himself, and in the aftermath, Seventh Sister becomes a vital commander among the ranks of the Inquisitorius. And that kicks us off into Season 2 of Star Wars Rebels. Sometime later on the planet Malachor, Eighth Brother has tracked Darth Maul to Malachor. After a confrontation with Kanan and Ezra, he sends a distress call, I believe it was, and Seventh Sister and Fifth Brother arrive as reinforcements, and they come to take on the Jedi. Ahsoka is also there, and a temporary alliance pits 3 Inquisitors against Ahsoka, Maul, and Kanan Jarrus. And in one swift, badass move, Maul kills the Seventh Sister, and later in the fight assists with Ahsoka in killing the Fifth Brother. She actually takes out his lightsaber, and then Maul kills Fifth Brother. So that's the end of Sun Hang. And then Eighth Brother is incidentally takes his own life when he tries to helicopter Saber away, and it breaks mid-flight, and he plummets to his death, and that's because Kanan Jarrus actually clipped his lightsaber hilt as well. So, and that is effectively the end of what we know of the Inquisitors. The only time chronologically later that any of them shows up is that rebel that uses the Fourth Sister's costume. But really, that's kind of the last one that dies, which is what we have on the list.
Do we know that he's dead? Because we know that Jedi can survive extremely falling really far, right?
I don't think he was the most competent. Yeah. So some Jedi are pretty good about being able to break a fall with the Force, but I think maybe he was taken off guard, and I don't know. I mean,
because
I think
in
the
High Republic books, Padawans can do that.
I think it was their way of just killing him off, and even if he did survive the fall, that whole big machine goes off, which kind of desolates the planet. And the only reason why, actually Vader survives, right? We know Vader survived that. But the only reason why Ahsoka survives as well is because Ezra eventually pulls her into that portal thing. And that's, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe when that big, huge Sith kind of temple thing erupts, I would imagine that this guy was probably fried in the process because that's what happened previously with all those ash statues of all those people that they're walking by on Malachor.
Yeah, I remember. I'm trying to remember what that device did.
It's
doesn't it kill all Force users?
It kills. It just turns people to ash, basically. I think, but it was a big planetary kind of
weapon.
Yeah, it was like a really ancient version of like the Death Star, basically. But yeah, it fried like tons of people. So I assume that even if he did happen to survive that fall, we've never seen him show up since, and if that machine did go off in the way it did, it probably killed him anyways. So,
right, no, good point.
Yeah, Star Wars Rebels was also very conservative with the way that it portrayed the Jedi, whereas Clone Wars saw them, especially Anakin, would kill people all the time. Rebels was a younger audience.
It was a younger audience, and other thing to keep in mind is it was bought by Disney.
Yeah,
for that show.
That's right. Yeah, and so, that being said, a lot of the Jedi, when they kill the Inquisitors, like even when Maul actually kills the Inquisitors by the lightsaber, you never see the lightsaber gash. You always see just the body fall, and like you don't see any blade cuts or anything. Same with the Stormtroopers; they hardly ever get shot, and when they are shot, they're shot in like the shoulder or whatever, and they hardly ever leave they hardly ever leave like a blaster bolt hole, whereas in the Clone Wars they did that all the time. In fact, there was one clone trooper which had the most epic death of all. It's Commander Thorn, named after Thor, and he has got that big turret gun which he refers to as his hammer, and he dies by like 8 blaster bolts to the chest or something. It was insane. It was a big step down from Clone Wars, and I feel like Rebels could have benefited a lot if they just bumped up the age group. But that's why those Inquisitors all kind of die in these weird kind of adjacent ways. Like, okay, Ahsoka kind of killed him, but Maul finished him off, and then Kanan kind of killed this one, but his lightsaber kind of did the rest or whatever. It's always like stuff like that.
I bet it's from the channel that went on
Yeah,
because
Disney
Clone Wars
XD.
was on Teletoon, yeah, and sorry, not
Cartoon
Cartoon
Network.
Network, wasn't it? Yeah, Cartoon Network, and then like you said, Rebels was on Disney XD. So
Yeah, exactly. It was a big step down, I think, as far as the age that they were targeting. The Clone Wars was definitely made for teenagers, and Rebels was made for kids. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's the Inquisitorius. So I mean,
None of them seem all that competent.
no, and I don't think that, I mean, like you said earlier, that's the idea, right? Like they're not, they were designed to be the villains of the
they're these
week.
shabby Jedi that they could convince
Yeah,
to not even become Sith, just be bad.
the simpletons,
like the goth kids.
the simpletons. Yeah, and that kind of like leads us to really get peeved at that thing we brought up earlier about how they kill the Grand Inquisitor off right away, because he's the only competent one, and they kill him off in season 1.
Yeah, that was just such a bad mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that if they didn't do that, maybe we wouldn't have got Thrawn back. So maybe it's better in the long run.
Yeah, they kind of worked. Yeah, exactly. So season 3 or 4, I think was it, they used Thrawn quite a bit as the villain, but it's true. I mean, I feel like if they reversed the order and he was the last one to go, it would have been a little better. But in some messed up way, it almost kind of adds a sense of realism where the Grand Inquisitor kind of guy falls, and then the whole organization, the rest of the Inquisitors kind of just drop like flies afterwards, because there's no one to properly coordinate what they're doing. And that's how 3 of them ended up on the same planet and getting killed by the same experienced Force users at once, right? Whereas I think the Grand Inquisitor would have probably taken a more strategic approach instead of just pitting them against like a previous almost Jedi Knight against a Jedi, basically a Jedi Knight, but was a Jedi Padawan, and then the last one was a previous Sith Lord, right? Like I feel like the Grand Inquisitor would have taken more deliberty to make sure that his 3 simpletons could have like all ganged up on one of those guys instead of facing off against all
until
3.
they separate.
Right, yeah, because it's just right there and then that the last 3 just boom, dead, right? And then that's it. That's the Inquisitors gone forever. So it's interesting, and it makes me wonder what's Nur being used for? What's the Fortress Inquisitorius being used for after the events of Star Wars Rebels? Because that's a huge location that you visit in the end of Fallen Order, and it was a pretty cool level in Fallen Order. I love that whole going to Nur.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. You get to like blow up walls and stuff, and like flood containers, and that's how you narrowly avoid Vader, for example. Well, that was really, really well done. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was
I like the idea that you like from the exterior, it just looks like this tower, but you go underwater and there's this huge facility, right?
So cool. Yeah.
You get to, like very Splinter Cell. If you ever played those games, it's kind of in that light, really. Like you approach from underwater and have to like swim and break in.
And speaking of which, I mean, we've seen Nur now in the Kenobi trailers, in the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailers. It's shown up twice now in each trailer. We've seen shots of the one of the meeting rooms, and out the window you can see just water. And we've seen an overhead shot of a shuttle or some kind of ship flying towards the landing platform near the top of the spire, and that's also the same Fortress Inquisitorius. So I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to be such a cool show, because we're not going to be spending all the time with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, it's going to also be jointly split with the villains that are hunting him down. And that to me is a very interesting story, because, it's not just a single-sided thing. It now becomes this dual-sided story where Anakin is also involved, and he's leading the Inquisitors at their peak, halfway through between the trilogies. And when a lot of them are, in fact, still alive, because this is before Star Wars Rebels. So a lot of them are still kind of kicking. And we know that Reva we've never seen her before, and she doesn't show up in Rebels. And
so we don't know if she lives through it or not.
Right. I have a feeling that she was made to be killed in this show. That's
Probably.
just my feeling.
They're all made to be killed, Josh.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what we've learned.
Yeah, I have a feeling though that she's not going to be a character that they will later use in another story. I feel like if they did absolutely anything to bring her back to the franchise, they'll bring her back for motion capture and stick her in Jedi Fallen Order 2 as a new Inquisitor that you end up not killing but shows up anyways, right? I could see that happening, but no, I don't see her living through the end of the show.
No, I think she's there and she's in the trailers to look like this prominent villain, and I think that Obi-Wan's going to be forced to kill her, and he's not. He's going to have not killed anyone with a lightsaber in a long time. I think that's going to be what that arc is for.
Yeah. We know the Grand Inquisitor. I mean, I don't know what to expect with that fourth Inquisitor. I don't think, neither of us know much about her, but I know we know the Grand Inquisitor will show up and be a prominent figure, as well as the fifth brother. So across the galaxy, he's got Inquisitors coming after him left, right, and center. We know that there's at least 4 that show up in the show, and 3 of them are kind of like onto his tail kind of thing.
And spoilers, they obviously don't know where he is, because as we find out at the end of the Rebels show, the Inquisitors, they never got Obi-Wan on Tatooine. He's still there.
Right. Yeah.
So they must have only found out about him when he left planet, and then whatever happens, and he gets back to Tatooine, and they don't find him again.
I'm going to speculate that they go to Tatooine. He senses that they're kind of onto him because he does something early on in the show to grab their attention, and he feels that protecting Luke in the best way possible is for him to leave planet and cause trouble elsewhere and lead them astray. And that kicks off the show's events, which kind of lead him to be basically in kind of a Mandalorian sense on the run from other bounty hunters with the child. He's going to be running away from the Sith to protect the child.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I feel like it's a similar vibe of a story there, and it could very, very well be like the feasible plot. But yeah, it'll be really cool to see all these Inquisitors show up. And, again, like now that we've run through it, we do know that the fifth brother will make it through this. We know that the Grand Inquisitor will also make it through it. We don't know the fate of the fourth sister or the third sister, which is Reva. So there's two Inquisitors right there that Obi-Wan Kenobi could in fact kill at some point in the show, and see a lot of cool lightsaber action, of course, because we know that there's this inevitable fight between him and Vader that we're being teased about all the time these days. You'll notice that on the new poster now, Vader's got the high ground.
No. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. He's so in the shadow of Obi-Wan Kenobi, you see this cliff, and he's on the top of the cliff. I just thought that was a funny little, because technically he does have the high ground.
Anecdote.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all we got for today. Unless there's any last minute things you want to bring up.
Well, I thought it was worth chatting about. It was really strange that the Inquisitors never tried to recruit past number 13 or whatever it is. Because I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, the Grand Inquisitor kind of tries to recruit Ezra.
Yeah.
But obviously it doesn't pan out. But why do they never recruit anyone else? So they get killed off. Why do they not try to fill their ranks?
I think it's just a matter of finding... So the Jedi that resist them, it's either someone ends up dead or it's basically come down to someone ends up dead. That's essentially kind of the situation, because to get more to fill their ranks, they need to find someone who's willing to join, and if they can apprehend somebody, then that person has to be tortured into submission. So
yeah,
like Trilla, right? Like the second sister. So there's definitely like a challenge to filling the ranks, and I'm honestly quite surprised that there are as many as there are by the time of the Purge, because you would think that more Jedi get captured afterwards, and then a couple of years go by after some mind control business going on, and then you have more Inquisitors running around out there hunting other Jedi. But in fact, when the Purge happens, almost right out of the gate, like weeks later, the Grand Inquisitor is already running a show with
Yeah,
6 or
pretty
7
fast.
people already aboard. It's like, it's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of strange.
Weak-minded fools.
Exactly. So yeah, so we know for sure that there's 12. The 13th one is the one that the RPG game kind of manufactured. So I don't really know if that's canon, but we know that there's at least 12. And going forward, it's possible they could introduce us to more. I know when Star Wars Rebels came out, it was a bit odd.
45th sister.
Yeah, 45th sister. It was always a bit odd that Star Wars Rebels came out and it was like, who's the 7th sister? Like, who's the 5th brother? And like,
This is Sister 117. Is anybody reading me?
Yeah, it was kind of like these weird naming conventions, but now we've basically got the full list. And it's aside from number 1, which I assume it's been scrapped in favor of the Grand Inquisitor instead. But we have 2 through 12, and the last 2 with no names or numbers, but we assume that because they are Inquisitors, like we assume that they're probably 11 and 12 naturally, with going with the pattern of the previous 10. But yeah, I think it's a complete list. And if we ever do get more than what we've been shown already with Kenobi, and if any new ones pop up in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, they'll likely have a name of the 13th whatever or the 14th whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing barring them at this point, I don't believe. Just adding more later if they need them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're basically villains.
It just gets clunky after a while.
Yeah, it does kind of get clunky after a while, and
What's the next number?
Yeah, my favorite Inquisitor so far, believe it or not, is actually not the Grand Inquisitor, even though he's kind of the leader and the main guy. You do, playing Jedi Fallen Order, get to relate and at least kind of get in the head a little bit more as to Trilla, and there's a bit of compassion there because she was forced into submission, because she was tortured, right? And because she felt betrayed by her master in a little way. So she is, I think, my favorite Inquisitor as far as the story goes.
Fair enough.
Is that yours? Is that your favorite story?
No, my favorite is probably 7th Sister because she's voiced by the woman who does Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Right. That's Freddie Prinze Jr.'s wife who plays Kanan.
That's right, which is probably how she got the gig. Yeah. He plays Kanan.
That's right, yeah. Speaking of which, because she, similar to a Bo-Katan situation, I would love to see her show up in costume. If we ever get a cameo of her in Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'll be very happy. That'd be cool. That would be a cool little thing, cool little gig. So, yeah,
I think a lot of fans appreciate that. If they kept the casting like that, kind of like the original voice actress. That'd be neat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's kind
of. Should be lots of Buffy crossover artwork.
Yeah. What do we got coming up on the roster here? I know this week at some point we're doing deleted scenes for the sequels. And following that, we'll have deleted scenes for the anthology films, which is Rogue One, Solo, and we'll try and see what we can grab for Mando and Book of Boba, Clone Wars, whatever else comes up. I know there's a few canceled or a few deleted scenes from some Clone Wars arcs, which are kind of worth talking about. Then we have our Celebration Know Before You Go. So anyone attending Star Wars Celebration is most definitely going to want to check that out. I know you and I, Blake, have been to Celebration 2017. We've got a few tips to throw out there, and we'll give you guys the roster and let you know how you can tune into Celebration at home for all the panels that are going to be streaming to us schmucks that can't make it out there. So
do we have one more show before Celebration hits?
We've got those. We got the 2 deleted scenes ones, and then we've got the Know Before You Go. So we got like 2 or 3 shows. Yeah. We'll see what we can get.
So for the Know Before You Go, I think we should both come up with a list of tips, and then we'll write them off back and forth.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll most certainly.
Number 3,
do that.
Bring tuna sandwiches.
Yeah, that's actually a good tip. Actually, yeah, bring some snacks.
Right? Food's expensive once you're in the security door.
Yeah, most definitely is. Yeah, it'll be a useful one. Alrighty. Well, we'll. That being said, we'll catch you in the next one.
Keep flying.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning into the show. Share the show with your friends. Give us that great 5-star rating. Leave a review if you can. And we're looking forward to having you back, tuning in to Star Wars Escape Pod. May the Force be with you.